You know, make me cry, baby.
Okay. Hello Synthesizer friends, this is Jacob from Perfect Circuit, and today I'm here to share with you my Moog Matriarch hot tips and tricks. A lot of these tips and tricks go a bit deeper than what we can cover in a single video, so if you're interested in more, check out the description below for a link to a Signal article that I wrote about some of these tips in greater detail. For the first of my tips fresh out of the oven today, I'm going to be talking about the Matriarch's cool ability to offer unique sync configurations. Most synthesizers with multiple VCOs offer some kind of sync control, where the follower oscillators will reset their waveform period upon completion of the leader oscillator's waveform cycle. Upon reset, the fragmented waveform cycles will impart additional harmonic goodness that is characteristic of sync sounds. Where Matriarch goes a step further is in its ability to offer cascading sync configurations, where each oscillator can lock into its neighbor at the left. Add in the onboard patch points for linear and exponential frequency modulation, and you unlock a world of sputtery, glitchy goodness. Next, so because the Matriarch's 4 oscillators each offer the ability to have individual waveforms, octave, and fine-tuning settings, the ability to still be able to address all 4 of them with the keyboard at once leads to interesting compositional opportunities. An easy and fun way to explore this is by varying the order in which you play notes. So for basic closed chord voicings, having one chord tone be an octave above or below, depending on the order in which you play the notes, can change your voicing from a very otherwise vanilla sound to a more interesting spread kind of voicing. I also like to use this approach in playing arpeggiated lines, where holding down certain notes as the next are played can impart immediate transposition and timbral variety. Many of the circuits inside the Matriarch are actually derived from earlier designs that were found in the early Moog modular systems. And the mixer section here is no exception, being based upon the classic CP3. This mixer is pretty cool because as you turn up the signal levels, the oscillators will start to overdrive and distort, and is kind of considered to be one of the things that really gives a Moog synth its characteristic sound. These mixers are also DC coupled, which means you can do cool, fun tricks with them, such as sending gates into one of the inputs and pinging the filter to get cool, sci-fi, extraterrestrial type of sounds. A classic favorite trick of mine in the realm of monophonic and modular instruments is to both filter a signal and then use that same signal to modulate the filter's cutoff frequency at the same time. So as an example, what I can do is I can take a single oscillator from the Matriarch, and I have the moderate filter cutoff to make the sound very mellow, but I can take that waveform's output and use it to modulate the cutoff of the filter to get a very buzzy, gritty kind of sound. Where the Matriarch takes this a step further is the fact that it has 4 oscillators. So if you're doing these sort of monophonic stacked oscillator type sounds, you can get very gritty beating kind of things going on top of the filter modulation as well. Because the Matriarch is a paraphonic instrument and we can assign different pitches to each oscillator based upon the notes the keyboard is playing, and those are mixed together before running into the filter, we can modulate our filter with the mixed summed output of chords or whatever notes we're playing for even more dissonant or consonant filter modulations depending on the notes and chords that you're playing. Next, I'm going to show off some of the smaller, more subtle things that I really appreciate about the Matriarch that I feel truly enhance its flexibility and sound design potential. So strap in and get ready for this fast whirlwind hot tips roundup. For the first of these mini tips, I want to remind everyone that the Matriarch has a bunch of super cool patch points on the back of it as well, in addition to the things on the top. Worth highlighting here are the ones for the keyboard output. So not only do you get cool things like note and gate outputs, depending on the notes you're playing on the keyboard, you also get velocity, mod wheel, and aftertouch output. The aftertouch in particular is one of my favorites to use when I really dig into the keys and impart some kind of CV modulation to like an LFO rate, for example. Next, in addition to all of the patch points that the filter offers, it also has some internal modulation connections that allow you to get complex movement and things going on without even needing a single patch cable. Yet if you do use the patch points, those modulations are added on top of what's already going on internally. By this I mean you have this attenuverter here to control the amount the filter envelope is affecting the filter's cutoff, as well as the left mod wheel section determined how much of this LFO modulates the filter over here. So adding in our aftertouch LFO modulation as well, we get some very complex dynamic movement going on. Next, I'm going to move on to the attenuverters, which seem like they're super simple, but the Matriarch kind of spices them up in a nice way that I really appreciate. On the left side, you have this utility section that has a mult at the top and then 2 attenuverters that are separate at the bottom. Attenuverter allowing you to control the polarity of a signal and its level in the positive or negative domains. The cool thing about these two here right next to each other is that the output of the top one normals down into the input of the second one, meaning that if I take this LFO signal that's being already modulated by the aftertouch, patch it into this first one, I get a level control over the intensity of that LFO. But because the output of that signal normals down into the input of the second attenuverter, I can use the second one to apply an offset voltage to scale that LFO further into the positive or negative territory. Finally, my last point that I'll share about the attenuverters that I really like is the fact that they have CV inputs on them. Because these are attenuverters that work in the positive and negative domains, not only does this make it function like a normal VCA, but a bipolar VCA at that, allowing you to do ring modulation if you wanted to. So ring modulation, obviously in the paradigm of a Moog synthesizer like this, is a little bit different than the sort of subtractive ideas that we're used to. But it's a really cool way to kind of layer in additional grit and sound on top of that Moog vibe that we all know and love. And as Beyonce always says, if you like it, put a ring on it. This next tip covers something deep within the Matriarch's global configurations. Normally when the delay is in sync mode, the time of the delay repeats locks into the arpeggiator sequencer or MIDI clock and gives you rhythmically related delays to that bass tempo. Usually this also covers the CV inputs for the time 1 and time 2 inputs right here. But in the global configurations menu, you can decouple that relationship of the CV inputs to the sync settings, allowing you to sort of bend the note timing on top of the tempo to get you these sort of chorused, warbly type things on top of a dotted eighth or 16th note delay. Earlier, we saw that we can manipulate the Matriarch's oscillator allocation system by changing the order in which we play different notes of a chord. So depending on how we played notes, we could shift notes up or down an octave or change their waveform arbitrarily. If you use a sequencer that offers manipulation over the sustain time of the notes that it generates, you can use this in a sort of generative algorithmic way as well. For this, I'm using the Torso Electronics T1, which has a handy control right on it to easily adjust the length of the notes that it's generating. And when I press play, you'll see that super short notes are always jumping to the first oscillator because by the time the next note arrives, the previous note has already completed and it is available for use again. However, if I turn up the sustain so that notes begin to overlap, they'll start jumping between the different oscillators depending on what's available and start playing notes that way, giving us octave transpositions and waveform changes per note. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed my fresh, pasture-raised hot matriarch tips. If you're interested in more details on some of these tips, specifically things relating to voice allocation on the matriarch, be sure to drop into the description below and check out the Signal article I wrote about these tips. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below letting us know what instrument you would like to see some hot tips and tricks on next time.